Welcome, everyone, to episode 64 of the Two Dads Talking podcast. Today, you get something a little different. You get half of a show. You get just Tom. Doug is unfortunately unavailable, and because we've recently picked up some followers and some viewers, we didn't want to go a week without giving you some new content. So, I am going to be doing this one solo. I'm sorry in advance. And we're going to call this the update episode. After 63 episodes and 2 years of recording and releasing podcasts, I figured it was about time to take a look back over some of our episodes, give you guys one good update on each episode, just one of the random topics we had, and do a couple of things with it. One, it gives our regular listeners that nice nostalgic feeling of, oh man, I was supporting these guys back then. And two, it gives the newer listeners sort of an overview of where we've been, what we've covered. And maybe you didn't want to start by listening to the really poorly edited, bad audio quality episodes like 1 through 8. But maybe there's a topic in there that does interest you, and this will help you pick out the previous episodes that you want to catch a little quicker instead of taking your time and working your way back through the more recent collection. So the goal is one update for each episode we've done. Hopefully, most of them will be relatively quick and short. Some of them will be a little bit larger because I found some things that fascinated me. And hopefully, we've got some fun times for you with this episode. Some nostalgia, some indexing that helps you, and maybe even a couple of episodes that you forgot about that you want to go back and listen to again. Hey, we like clicks. We're a podcast. We can't help it. So the first episode, aptly named Pilot. Hard to believe that, we started recording these 2 years ago this month. That's kind of crazy to me. In Pilot, we talked about quite a few things. One of the topics we had, the one that I brought to the table, was Costello, a female octopus who got scientists' attention because she was having dreams, of all things. And it seems she was having nightmares, and a whole lot of theories came out and speculation came out, and then Costello died. And there's a lot of conflicting theories about what happened with Costello. But one of the more interesting things that came of this poor octopus death is that the octopus neural system got studied way more intensely than it had been prior to this discovery. And the way that what they discovered was that the octopus's distributed nervous system really was unique, and it was vastly different from the way the human neural system works. But because it enables the octopus to handle complex tasks with this sort of decentralized control that's delegated through multiple brain-like structures, they thought this might be a really interesting approach to building neural structures for robotics. Today, they are now using octopus neural anatomy as a model for studying intelligence and for creating neural architecture for robots in neuroscience, in biomedicine, combat, and all sorts of other applications. The fancy robots that you're seeing videos on when you look at Reels and Shorts and Instagram that are doing really interesting things, a lot of them have an octopus-inspired neural network. So thanks, Costello. We're sorry that we lost you. But for more reading, go take a look at that. Just do a search for Octopus Neural Network Inspires Robotics, and you'll find some really interesting things. Episode 2 was called Fruit, Bears, and Gandhi. And man, the audio quality on these first 6 or 7 episodes were really, really brutal. If you haven't listened to them yet, don't rush to those. Stick with our newer stuff first. Save that for when you're hardcore and you're a fan and you really want some old school Tom and Doug. But Fruit, Bears, and Gandhi was a really interesting one where we talked about a bunch of different topics that we'd referenced throughout later shows, like Toko, the human dog. One of the things we debated, one of our first real good debates, was about redshirting your children, whether or not your kids should start kindergarten as soon as they're old enough to do so, or whether some parents might want to hold their kids back. This was an episode where we both shared some of our personal experiences. My wife and I redshirted our first 2 children for different reasons. For us, it was the right decision. Our kids are thriving. They're testing multiple grade levels ahead of where they are. They've come a long way with maturity and with emotional control and with their social skills. And frankly, with at least one of my kids, it would have been very challenging to start on time and would have been a distraction in the classroom and would have made it harder on the teacher. So for us, redshirting was right. That's your update here, is that redshirting has worked out well for us. But ultimately in the show, we agreed that this was a decision parents should make based on how they understand their own kids. And after talking to other professionals in the education or even mental health fields with their kids, and I'm still standing by that. Episode 3 was called Mental Health Burps. This was a fun one where Doug found who we thought was the loudest burper ever. Her name was Kimberly Winter. She set a record in a closed audio studio, burping at 107.3 decibels. For comparison, that's louder than most lawnmowers. It turns out that the world burping record is actually split into a men's and a women's division. And there was a man, an Australian man named Neville Sharp, who burped at 112.4 decibels, so 5.1 decibels louder than Kimberly was. And that is louder than most motorcycles. Most motorcycles are around 110 decibels, it seems. So the two loudest burps in the world, Kimberly still holds the women's record, 107 decibels, and Neville Sharp, 112 decibels. That's a lot of burp. Episode 4, we talked about John Joe Gray, a Texas isolationist. Ooh, say that like 5 times fast. A Texas isolationist who was charged with assaulting a police officer but refused to show up in court, refused to cooperate, and instead locked himself into his 47-acre compound in Trinidad, Texas. In January of 2016, I'm moving forward a little bit. He refused to comply. They didn't come arrest him because he essentially said, if you come onto my property, someone's going to die. And he armed his kids and his grandkids with rifles and had them standing the perimeter. He actually got a noose and a stand and put it at the entrance to his driveway. And he just lived isolated on a 47-acre compound for 14 years. Finally, a new prosecuting attorney took over, and while reviewing old charges and seeing what he was going to carry over and prosecute versus what he was going to drop, he realized this guy had essentially isolated himself and locked himself up in home arrest for 14 years, which was longer than he would have gotten if he had just gone to court. So they dropped the charges. But they didn't tell him they dropped the charges. So they let John Joe Gray sit on his property, thinking that he had to be isolated and thinking they wanted to arrest him for about another year and a half before finally he figured out the charges had been dropped. The update on that case, in that episode, I had talked to Doug and said, the one thing I'm pretty sure about is that he paid his taxes, because there's no way the government's going to let you just get away with not paying your taxes. You can bite a police officer, you can assault a police officer, you can threaten police officers with violence, but if you don't pay your taxes, they're going to come get you. It turns out I was wrong. In January of 2016, he was handed paperwork for a $34,618 unpaid property taxes bill and told he had until January 31st to comply. He essentially told them, you want it, come and get it, and threatened another armed standoff. And no one knows what happened there. They haven't raided the property. Again, they've chosen not to do so because of the kids that are involved, and they don't want to harm kids. They don't want the collateral damage. He's 77, 78 years old, something like that now. So it's unlikely they're going to go after him for this. And in our Dads and Taxes episode, where we talked about lots of taxes, my guess is that it's going to be handled sort of as Doug suggested there. They're just going to wait until he passes away, and it'll be dealt with in the estate taxes. Episode 5, Bears, Giraffes, Cheap Food, and Doug's favorite football player of all time, the GOAT, Tom Brady. We changed our name to Two Dads Talking from Go Dad Go. If you remember, we were originally called Go Dad Go. We decided Two Dads Talking was more on brand and fit us a little bit better. And then we talked about a rare giraffe born in a zoo, in a conservation, without spots. And we talked about what they were going to try to name her. And your update on this giraffe is that they named her Kaipki. And I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Kaipki means unique. And she was, as far as we knew, the only living giraffe that was born without spots, and the first one to be born without spots since the 70s. As you can imagine, being born without spots is a huge evolutionary issue for a giraffe. They don't blend into their background as well, so they're more targeted by predators. They also, it turns out, their spots help them adapt to sun heat and provide UV radiation protection and all sorts of other neat things. So this giraffe was sort of considered a novelty, and they didn't think it happened in the wild. And then in 2023, September 12th, 2023, a spotless Angolan giraffe calf was spotted at the Mount Etjo Safari Lodge in Namibia. It's the first known instance of a spotless giraffe in the wild, and no one knows if this poor giraffe is still alive or if it's been already taken care of by predators. But it did happen in the wild, and it happened pretty soon after Kaipki. And unfortunately, the update here is that as of April of this year, we don't know if this cat is still alive or not. But Kaiki was not alone, at least in some regards, for the first couple years of her life. Episode 6, we talked about Bob Barker, elephants, Marvel, and a whole lot more. The Bob Barker topic was interesting. We talked about his life. We talked about, conspiracy theories about him. And I think we settled in the fact that he was probably a pretty good human being and that we were fans. We talked very notably about the Happy Gilmore scene where he fights Adam Sandler. And that was the moment that kind of stood out in this episode to me as I was clicking back through our episode descriptions. And the update for this one is that there is a Happy Gilmore 2 movie coming out in July 25th, 2025 on Netflix. Adam Sandler is going to be playing Happy Gilmore again. And when you search, is Bob Barker going to be in Happy Gilmore 2? And remember, Bob Barker's dead, but this was something I found while scrolling for it. The AI-generated response for the Google AI is, while there's no official confirmation of Bob Barker's return, the original film star Adam Sandler reprises his role, and the sequel is set to release on Netflix July 25th. The trailer for Happy Gilmore 2 teases several cameos, including by Eminem, Post Malone, and Becky Lynch. Main cast includes Julie Bowen, Christopher McDonald, who returns as Shooter McGavin. So according to AI, there's still a chance Bob Barker is going to appear in Happy Gilmore 2. If they do some CGI Bob Barker for this movie, I will rescind my satirical snarkiness with the AI search engine, and I will simply be impressed. That would be fantastic. If an AI or a CGI Bob Barker comes back and beats up on Happy Gilmore in this movie, that alone would be worth the price of a ticket to me. Episode 7, we talked about dad jokes, making your family stronger, and also our opinions on sex scenes in movies. We had some disagreements in this, but generally speaking, we agreed way too much for this to be an exciting episode. Your update on this is that dad jokes are still good for your kids. It's still shown in studies to give them cognitive benefits and to help them with emotional connection to their parents and to make them resilient to cringe was the actual term that I saw on there. So dad jokes are good for your kids. Keep telling them. Episode 8 was titled The Beatings Will Continue Until Morale Improves. And this was about a New Mexico governor who, in response to a public shooting, came out and said that she was no longer going to allow card-carrying people to carry firearms. She was going to make carrying firearms in public illegal, whether you had a concealed permit, whether you were a legal carrier. And this is in New Mexico, which I believe was an open carry state anyway. And she basically told people, I'm doing away with your Second Amendment right. You can no longer carry guns. The sheriff told her he wasn't going to enforce it. He came out publicly and said, I can't enforce that. I don't know what she's talking about. And then the big thing for me in this episode was when she said, I'm not required by law to maintain the oath that I took the day that I was sworn in, because she swore to uphold the Constitution. And her big statement that really upset me as an elected official was that she's under no obligation to hold true to her oath she took in public when she took the office. So that was my big takeaway. The reaction to her proclamation, we'll call it, were, as you could expect, protests, demonstrators just marching around the streets and public areas openly carrying firearms. September 12th in Albuquerque, the Old Town Plaza was apparently full of citizens who just strapped on all their firearms and walked around. State Republican lawmakers called for her impeachment. They labeled the order unconstitutional. And then gun control advocates supported it and kind of shouted it as a bold step at the same time. So you had standoffs between armed citizens who felt their rights were being infringed and unarmed gun control advocate citizens who were standing face to face and toe to toe with them and shouting back and forth, feeling as though their rights were being infringed upon. And it seems that no one got hurt, no one got shot, so that's good. There was an amendment to the order on September 15th. Grissom kind of backed up a little bit. She took a step backward and she narrowed the ban to public parks and playgrounds. And then she got more feedback. And then eventually, when it expired after 30 or 60 days, she did not renew it. And she's been walking backwards ever since so that she can get elected again. That seems to be the play there. Episode 9, Improve Your Morale, Part 2. We talked a little bit more about what was going on in New Mexico, but the big update on this one was there was a book that Doug recommended called The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. It's a book on, essentially, you've got a demon explaining to his nephew and less experienced demon how to win over the souls of people and keep them confused and how to sort of win this fight, evil versus good. And it turns out it was fantastic. It was an excellent excellent story, and I'm glad that Doug recommended it to me. I don't think he's yet read anything I recommended to him, that bum. He did watch one movie I recommended, but yeah, I'm clearly way better at, taking his advice and valuing his opinions than he is mine. So I guess I'm the spurned lover in this relationship. Ugh, that sounds wrong. Okay. The other thing we talked about was Dan Saunders, and this is the one that has a real interesting update. Dan Saunders was a 29-year-old bartender from Victoria, Australia. He discovered a glitch in the National Australia Bank ATMs that allowed him to withdraw money that was way beyond what he actually had in his account. Essentially, one night while he was drunk between 1 and 3 in the morning, he tried to transfer $200 from his credit account to his savings at an ATM machine. And the ATM machine displayed the words transaction canceled, which he had never seen before, and then ejected his card. But then it also ejected the $200 and dispensed the money. His savings balance increased without debiting the debit account, and he later realized that the ATM was offline from the bank's network between 1 and 3 a.m., and that if he repeatedly transferred funds and withdrew cash before the system reversed the transactions, he essentially had this way to trick the system into showing a fake balance and giving him an infinite money hack, is what it was. He took millions, he lived a playboy life, he went to casinos. There was quite a bit, and ultimately he ratted himself out. He would have probably never gotten caught, except that he ratted himself out on national television. And the update on this is that his story has inspired an 8-part podcast called The Glitch. I've started it, I haven't finished it. And there's a film coming out soon telling his story called ATM Boy. Episode 10 was the Oprah Paradox. Honestly, this is one of my favorite stories or favorite episodes. It's in the top 10 at least. Even though I really don't care much about the Maui wildfire conspiracies, I'm not sure how much, of a leg there is to stand on there. This episode was really fun. And the update on this is the first time we talked about Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey, the violent horror slasher film that was made as soon as Disney no longer had protected copyrights to Winnie the Pooh. Like the same year, somebody came out and said, I want to make a violent slasher flick. And it's gory. And the first 10 or 15 minutes are fantastic and 100% worth watching if you're a horror fan or if you just like dark dystopian stuff. The rest of the movie is just a normal slasher and it's kind of boring. But Blood and Honey 2 premiered March 18th, 2024 in London. It was theatrically released here in the States about 2 weeks later. The movie poster looks like Avengers Endgame. If you have a chance to Google this, just Google Blood and Honey 2. And the poster really does look like Marvel's Endgame poster. It's fantastic. This movie included Pooh, Piglet, Tigger, and Owl. I have not watched this yet, but the idea of an evil Tigger and an evil owl seems horrifying to me. It made $7.5 million worldwide, so it wasn't exactly a blockbuster success, but its budget was only $500,000. So it was a $7 million profit. And then the other update on this is that Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey 3 is scheduled to be released in 2026. Episode 11, Get to the 11th Week. Here we fought about tribalism mostly. I shared a story about someone that I knew from basic training, and this is where our term get to week 11 kind of spawned from. We did not plan to release this on episode 11. It just kind of worked out and we got lucky that way. But this is, there are a few sayings that have come out of this podcast that really matter to me. Get to week 11 or reach week 11 is one of them. Be your own kind of weird that I'll talk about in a minute is one of them. How you break matters is one of them. But in this episode, the update for this, we talked a lot about Hamas in this episode. And your episode 11 update is that tribalism still sucks. It's still holding us back from having an enlightened civilization, and Hamas still sucks. Episode 12, Big Game, Burgers, and Bush. This was a fun one. Anytime you hear me refer to Doug as a psychopath, it probably stems from this episode and the way he eats cheeseburgers. Since then, we have confirmed, your update is that we have confirmed Doug is a psychopath, not only because of the way he eats cheeseburgers, but also because when he has a web browser open, he has 1 or 2 tabs open at a time, and that is it. So your update on this one? Doug is a psychopath. Confirmed. Moving on. Episode 13, Mortality and Mother Teresa. This one was tough. We talked a lot about a friend of mine. It was, how do we talk to our kids about death? How do you introduce that subject matter to your children? It's a hard topic. And it was a very, very challenging one to actually discuss. We talked about the movie Coco and pets passing away and how you can utilize that. And then I talked about my friend Krista. I mentioned in this episode that the Supernatural cast, there were things happening I couldn't talk about, but she was a super fan of the TV show Supernatural, and the cast was sensational to her. They named an entire conference after her shortly before she passed and had her down and gave her a VIP experience. And it was, sadly, I wasn't there. My wife was. I was not able to make that trip. But everything I've seen from that was absolutely amazing. And one of the little details I couldn't talk about, this will be your update on that situation, is that before Krista passed away, Jensen Ackles made the trip all the way to Rhode Island, drove to her Rhode Island home in Baby, in the car from the show, one of the cars they used in the actual filming. And he brought with him beer from his brewery because Krista was an aficionado of beer. He brought her beer from his Texas brewery in the car and took her for a drive, and they went to the beach and they drank beer. And man, when was the last time you heard of a Hollywood celebrity doing something like that for a fan? I, there are no words. I mean, the whole Supernatural cast and team, everything that they did for Krista was truly amazing. And we will never forget their kindness. And I mean, she was 100% worth it, but you just don't see that kind of compassion and caring out of celebrities. When you do, it often looks scripted. This was something he wanted out of the press and they didn't want to mention, and we weren't allowed to talk about it before it happened. And man, God bless those guys. Just absolutely fantastic human beings. And it was appreciated, and the love was real. Episode 14, Smashing the Median. This is where Doug told his arrest story. Your update on this episode is very simple. Doug has not been arrested since then, but not yet, at least. We're still waiting for this whole psychopath thing to come to a head and see what happens. But to this date, since then, Doug has not been arrested. We have learned that he once pooped on a cop car, no, humped a cop car. It seems that he got away with that one. So simple update here, he's not been arrested. But if you want that story, and it was a fun one, tune in to episode 14. Episode 15, Be Your Own Kind of Weird. This was a story this was an episode just after Krista passed. I spent time telling stories about her, about Germany, about my time with her at Oktoberfest and some other things. And we talked a lot about one of her sayings. It was in her yearbook and it was in her obituary, be your own kind of weird. She and I shared a passion for the Lord of the Rings. That was something we both really, really had a fandom for. But since then, I've had the first line of the Strider poem tattooed in Elvish on one arm, and on the other one, fuck cancer, BYOKW for be your own kind of weird, and then KMM for Krista. And I'm super proud to have those tattoos and to carry that ink on me. Episode 16, How You Break is Important. This was another one of those moments where I feel like we captured something that was truly capstone importance for the podcast. We gave some interesting examples, and this has to deal with how trauma can shape you, or how you can shape yourself after trauma in recovery, and how you can use what it does to you to try to come out the other side. At one point in this episode, one of the quotes that I had written down was, somebody was probably murdered in my backyard. And your update on this is that I think that's probably more likely than ever. We'll get to that when we talk about the update for ghosts, ghoulish jokes, and Groot up the butt. But the update on this one is I think I was onto something. I think somebody was probably murdered in the backyard of that house, and I am glad that we have since sold it and moved on. Episode 17, Don't Poop on People's Windshields. No, this was not Doug. This was when I was a police officer and a college kid decided to prove to me that I had no authority on campus by pooping on the windshield of my police car. It didn't go well for him because he was wrong, but that's not the update I'm going to give you. In this episode, we talked about the tooth fairy and how each of us, when our kids started losing teeth, neither of us knew what to do and how much money to give, and it was a little bit confusing. So we talked about tooth fairy inflation, and this one's a little bit of a bigger update in some of these episodes. I'm just going to read you some of the stuff I found during a quick search regarding tooth fairy inflation when I looked for it online. Tooth fairy payouts have been influenced by inflation and economic trends as tracked by Delta Dental's original tooth fairy poll since 1998. A summary of recent trends connecting to... I'm sorry, my daughter just got home. I'm going to pause this for just a second and greet my child. One moment, please.
I want to give you.
What do you want to give me, kiddo?
Yeah.
A picture. Oh, thank you.
you buy me a picture of a grape one and Alex a flower rosy one?
Oh,
And this is a picture of pizza.
I love pizza.
But it's not real. It's actually just paper and a picture.
Okay.
We colored it with some blueberry and pepperoni.
Blueberries and pepperoni on my pizza?
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much.
But don't eat it for real.
I won't eat it for real.
And
Thank you very much.
Piece of paper, that's a pixel, okay?
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to record a little bit and I'll see you when I'm done, okay? All right, kiddo. I'll see you in a little while. Go upstairs. Can you what? Can you join me on the podcast right now? Oh, I'm talking about a topic right now that you probably shouldn't hear about. You just want to say hi real quick? Okay, go ahead and say hi. Say hi to the microphone. Who are you?
Cassie Grace can mask, but I like to be called Cassie.
But you like to be called Cassie.
What do you call a fairy who doesn't take showers?
Oop, you gotta say it a little bit louder.
What do you say a fairy who doesn't take showers?
What do you call a fairy who doesn't take showers? I don't know. What do you call a fairy who doesn't take showers?
A Tinkerbell.
Stinkerbell. Yes, you do. Okay, Daddy's gonna finish recording. Can we go up there?
Stink.
They're so stinky because they don't take showers.
Yeah.
All right, you head upstairs. I'll see you in a little bit.
And you also find a bell.
They are also a kind of bell. So I was going to pause that and then just, kind of forgot. So you all just get a dose of my youngest daughter. Okay, thank you, kiddo. And I hope you kind of appreciate that she's got my sense of humor. All right, I'm going to set aside this lovely slice of pizza that she colored for me. She's still talking at me. I tried to record this episode before she got home today, and as you can tell, I failed. All right, back to the Tooth Fairy. Tooth Fairy payouts have been influenced by inflation and economic trends, blah, blah, blah. It's been tracked since 1998. In 1998, the average payout for a lost tooth was $1.30, equivalent to about $2 in 2024 dollars when adjusted for inflation. By 2024, the actual average reached $5.84. So about the time we released this episode, the average price was almost $6 per house per tooth. Tooth Fairy payouts had outpaced general inflation 3% annually by a wide margin, with a 349% increase since 1998. Recent trends. In 2022, payouts hit $5.36, up 14% from 2021. That's double-digit inflation and aligning with a 17.6% S&P 500 rise. Okay, so it's matching the S&P increase. The South was $5.70, which tracked the national average, and the Northeast was the most expensive at $7.36 on average. So New England is screwing it up for everybody. In 2023, the average peaked at about $6.23, a 16% jump. That's to go along with an 11% S&P 500 decline. So even though the S&P 500 dropped, we still paid more money for friggin' teeth. The South was the highest at this point at $6.59, with first teeth fetching $7.29 on average. Delta Dental projected that at this rate, payouts could hit $30 by 2048. In 2024, they dropped 6% to $5.84. We're still recovering from COVID here, I guess. The market was getting bad, and there was reflecting inflation, or reflecting cooling inflation. First tooth payouts dropped about 20 cents, and the West took the lead to $8.54, while everything else kind of chilled out a little bit. The Midwest was $3.63, by far the cheapest in the region. It was down 36% from its previous. And then the S&P 500 rose 20%, which means, guess what? It's going to go back up. They haven't got the final numbers down for 2025. Doesn't have any data yet. 2024 still shows a decline, but they're expecting it to go up. I don't know what to say about this, except that if you're going to invest in something, forget the S&P 500, invest in Tooth Fairy stock. That seems to be way, way more consistent and with bigger jumps. Okay, let's see. Dads Need Help Still is what I have for episode 88. Oh, Dads Need Help 2 was that episode. In this episode, we talked a lot about how dads need support. It's part of what we want to do is provide support and be someone here that shows dads you don't need to be perfect to be a good dad. You need to show up and be good enough. And you're going to be, if you do that, you will be a great dad, even if you're not a perfect father. In this episode, my brother, I just commented, had just had his first baby, and I predicted he would be an awesome dad. Your update is that I was right. My brother Justin is a fantastic dad. He's dealing with the struggle and the adjustment of going from single to having kids and being a dad, and he's doing a great job. So, shout out to my brother. Tom prediction that was 100% on point. 1 point for me. Episode 19: Death machines should be ADA accessible. Well, that was a fun one. We talked in this one about the sarcopod, which was designed in Switzerland and used by a euthanasia activist. His name was Philip Nitschke, and a Dutch engineer, Alexander Banink. The sarco, it's short for sarcophagus, which I didn't realize the time that we recorded this. Somehow I missed that connection. The sarcopod is a 3D printed portable capsule that essentially facilitates assisted suicide by flooding a chamber with nitrogen and dropping oxygen levels to the point where someone dies a peaceful and painless death through hypoxia. Your updates on this one. We did touch a little bit on this with updates at one point, but we didn't really go deep. Your updates on this is that the first confirmed use was a 64-year-old American woman from the Midwest who was suffering from severe immune compromise. She used a sarcopod in a forest cabin in Switzerland on September 23rd, 2024. The pod apparently displayed a message: if you want to die, press this button. She pushed the button voluntarily and died via nitrogen asphyxiation. And the event was actually witnessed on a live stream by members of The Last Resort, an assisted dying organization that was led by someone named Florian Willett. Swiss police arrested several people, including a Dutch photographer, on suspicion of inducing and aiding and abetting suicide, and launched a criminal investigation. The capsule and the woman's body were secured for an autopsy, and we talked a little bit about that on the cast. The big update is that on June 3rd, 2025, so literally last week, Florian Willett, who was arrested in connection with that September 2024 case, died by assisted suicide in Germany, reportedly due to psychological trauma from his detention and arrest. Philip Nitschke, who was in Germany during the use, avoided arrest completely. So last week, the gentleman who led The Last Resort apparently died by assisted suicide. I really don't know what to say about that. Clearly, he believed in the product, I guess, is the bottom line. Episode 20, Mr. Rogers and Jake Paul had a baby. This was a fun one. I got a lot of feedback about this episode, which I didn't think it was that interesting at the time. But Blippi's origin story is fascinating and is a crappy one and is, well, it's interesting. So if you don't know that, you should go ahead and look at it. One of the things we talked about in this episode also was AI and what we would actually do with AI. It's amazing how much has changed in just 1 year. Doug suggested our AI overlords would basically be used for burger flipping. What we're seeing instead today, literally every other day this week, there's been an article about AI rewriting its own code and rewriting its own software to avoid being shut down. We're seeing robots that are being run off of AI operating models that are assaulting people. We're seeing really interesting things where AI is kind of living the Jurassic Park quote, life will find a way. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say about that one, except that, wow, it's changed a lot in a year, and we'll keep an eye on it. And Doug and I have some AI talks to have here in upcoming episodes, so we'll have some more interesting stuff there. Episode 21, how to talk to your kids and maybe how not to about bad drivers. This was a fun one. We made some prop bets and some Super Bowl bets, and we did all kinds of neat stuff. And then we noted that we had some mysterious followers that were listening to our podcast, and the countries they were listening from simply showed up as unknown. So we thought maybe Doug was going to get head bagged for some of the stuff that he had been talking about and dragged away and locked away in a dark base, a dark post, and that he'd be replaced with someone and maybe I wouldn't know about it. The year update here is that to this date, to the best of my knowledge, the CIA has not head bagged Doug, although again, he didn't show up to record this week. But to the best of my knowledge, they've not yet head bagged him and replaced him. And if they did do it, they've done a very convincing job. So that's your update for 21. Episode 22, What is a Woman Answered? Boy, this one drew some fire. Whew, okay. Not going to go back into those waters. Not really going to cross back into that. We'll cover this when we do the follow up to it. But if you want to see the very provocative argument that we had there, if you want to see kind of what brought more hate emails and messages than it actually brought listens and clicks, go listen to episode 22. What is a woman answered? Where two middle-aged cis white men essentially tried to answer the question and solve the problem. Episode 23, Veni, Vidi, and Vitro. The Alabama Supreme Court ruling about essentially what they should do with IVF patients and how embryos should be treated. It all stemmed from someone burning their hand on a vial and dropping it and literally destroying fertilized embryos. And then the question arose, how do we deal with this? Do we treat them like a life? Do we treat this as something else? And Alabama took a very strongly Christian position on it and said that God is a part of our world and God is a part of our laws, and we're going to enforce it as such. And they wrote essentially, they wrote a court statement that used the word God and told people to act in the image of God. And that was a part of the official legal opinion, which was part of my criticism here. Since then, your update on this one is that Justice Tom Parker, who was the person who wrote the controversial opinion, declared for candidacy for public office in June of 2025, so about a week and a half ago. IVF patients have rallied against him and criticized his politicization of healthcare. Boy, talking is challenging tonight. And an Alabama fertility lawyer is running for state Supreme Court who's fighting on the other side of this and is pushing back on it and says that the Supreme Court decision is anti-family and wildly out of touch. So you've got two different people who were strongly involved in this running for pretty high-level offices as of this very month. Episode 25 was episode 24, Holy Shit, He's Airborne, where I told some police stories, including probably the single greatest vehicle pursuit that I was ever a part of. Your update on this one is that apparently I'm still remembered in Newport News. A couple of colleagues of mine were down there on business a few weeks back and ran through a stop sign and name dropped me on the officer who pulled them over. And got very lucky that it was an officer who remembered me and he let them go. So if you're driving in the city of Newport News and you commit a minor moving violation, just go ahead and mention me and the podcast, and maybe you get lucky and maybe it gets you off the hook. Episode 25, Election 2024. We were so disappointed in the candidates that we had for that election year that we basically just agreed the whole time that the situation sucked and that there was nothing to do about it. Yeah, that's pretty much the whole episode. And your update on this is that Trump won and he still sucks, and Biden would have sucked too, and Kamala Harris probably would have sucked too. Our presidential candidates all suck. Vanilla Coke still sucks, no matter what Doug says. And that's your entire update for that episode. Episode 27, Doug's internet was a key topic of conversation on this one because this was like the lowest point of his internet. And then we argued a lot about a theoretical question that he had found on Reddit. And the question was this: if an average man is stuck in a time loop and the only way for him to escape is to beat Garry Kasparov in chess, how long will it take him to get out of the time loop? And there were some other sort of rules establishing follow-up comments on here. The man's not allowed to cheat. Every time he loses, the time loop resets, and he remembers the last game, but Garry Kasparov does not. The man has an average level intelligence and is able to understand the rules of chess, but has never played it before, blah, blah, blah. So how long does it take to go from zero to hero, essentially? And my argument was that you're never going to beat Garry Kasparov because you only have average potential and you're an average person, and Garry Kasparov is so far above average in chess that your potential is going to cap you before you ever reach his level. I decided to ask AI because Doug and I argued about this one ad nauseum. AI gave me a final answer, so I guess this one points to Doug and I give him a point for this one, even though it didn't account for my theory of capped potential. AI said that the average man needs to play approximately 9,200 to 10,000 games to develop the skill to beat Garry Kasparov and escape the time loop. This accounts for reaching a near grandmaster level, about 2,700 ELO, through iterative learning and securing a win with a reasonable probability. I have almost certainly played more than 10,000 games of chess in my life, and I would go 0 for 100 in 100 games with Garry Kasparov. But AI said it. I'm giving Doug the point. That's where we're at. Episode 28, The Problem with Sleepovers. Doug and I both talked about the issues we had with our kids doing sleepovers, and not much has changed here. My daughter did have her first sleepover, but it was set up in a really interesting way that we talked about in one of our episodes. A parent hosted it at a public library and invited parents to sleep over, and it was kind of neat. But not much has changed other than that. Next episode was 29, Man vs. Bear, a grizzly question. This one took on a pop culture question that was kind of dominating our social media. It was trending everywhere. We felt it was sort of a stupid question, but it initially was raising a really interesting argument, an interesting point. The problem is no one took it that way, and people just went absurd and turned it into an opportunity to bash people. You can listen to that episode if you want to hear us argue about that. But on this one, the update is quite simple. During our 100 Men versus a Gorilla episode, we found a survey where 6% of people think that they can take a grizzly bear one-on-one, unarmed, in combat. So the update on this is basically we should have gone a little bit deeper on this. If a man thinks he can beat a grizzly bear, you probably want to leave him alone in the woods. Episode 30 was the cube rule. Make me a sandwich. It's the law, is what I think we called this one. We fought about this one too. Merriam-Webster, for your updates, still declares the hot dog is a sandwich, while the National Hot Dog and Sausage Council, yes, that exists, declared in 2015 hot dogs are not sandwiches, that they have a distinct cultural identity and qualify as their own food group. We decided to yield to the cube rule. I refer everyone to thecuberule.com when you need to kill some time and take a look yourself and make up your own mind. All right, so before we continue here, I should probably apologize to you guys ahead of time. I had to stop recording just after episode 30 update last time. Just, got interrupted and didn't get to pick it back up. Have been extremely busy between the nonprofit on which I sit as a board member and my volunteer work with a veteran in New London right now who's dealing with some PTSD issues, and the kids having half days every week because it's the last week of school, and my actual day job. And then today trying to pick up a passport, which should have been, a 4-hour round trip drive, followed by about an hour of paperwork. And it turned into an all day 4:45 in the morning until about 4:30 PM ordeal. I apologize. I'm going to try to stitch these two together and hopefully it's fairly cohesive. But I do love you guys enough. I'm going to try to finish this thing up and get it edited and have it released one day late. Hopefully it comes out on Thursday, June 12th. It is June 11th at about 4:40 in the evening as I start to try to record this thing again. So if there's an editing glitch in here, if the audio sounds a little different from this point forward because it's a separate recording, I apologize. Forgive me. I love you. Thank you for bearing with me. And thanks again for being with us on this 64 episode journey that we've had. We do appreciate you. It looks like I left off last time with the cube rule, episode 30. We talked about that, and that was the last update that I gave. Episode 31 was our first ever live stream. This one was kind of special. This was really interesting. It was the first time I heard Doug laugh the way that I heard him laugh in this episode. We talked about Terrence Howard and how he's on math, spelt a little differently for the algorithm. Terrence Howard, you know him as War Machine or from Empire, or you know him from a bunch of different movies, I'm sure. He reinvented math. He discovered that 1 times 0 is actually 1. And he's fixing our mathematics system. And that was just the beginning on his mathematics take. He also claims that he has killed gravity and he's developed a new means of flight called tangential flight. He claims that he has memories from when he was 6 months old in the womb, thinking to himself and telling himself, remember, you've been here before. Don't forget that you've been here before. And that he, I think he said 18 months. Oh, no, I'm sorry. He said 6 years old. At 6 years old, solved the mystery of the flower of life, which Da Vinci dedicated his life to and couldn't solve. And Terrence Howard did this at 6 years old. He claims that he can cure cancer and that he's made a lot of claims. And it was a very interesting video. We did a live stream sharing the video. If you haven't seen that one, it's fun. In part because it was the first time Doug and I did this live stream thing together, and in part because the Terrence Howard take was so unique, and this man is very firmly committed to it. And no matter whether you think he's crazy or whether you think there's something to what he's talking about, he is committed to it, and he believes it, and it is fascinating. But we talked about that. Since that date, he has not provided any empirical evidence of this tangential flight that he has built, that he has enabled. He's talked about how our planets, our notion of how the planets are built is incorrect, and he can prove that. And he talked about using his linchpin methods, how he can rebuild. I think he said Saturn. Again, hasn't been a lot of actual evidence with this, but what did happen was he challenged Neil deGrasse Tyson, and challenged him to debate him and challenged him to refute things. And then he said that Neil deGrasse Tyson was ignoring him. And then Neil deGrasse Tyson came out and said, I didn't ignore him. I responded. He doesn't want to engage in a debate with me. And then he released a 17-minute video using math and science to refute Terrence Howard's claims and explain why he was incorrect and why his assertions were wrong. That's your update there, is that Neil deGrasse Tyson did come out. He did try to have this discourse, and it did not work. The 17-minute response is a good one. It's available on YouTube. It's easy to find. In the meantime, Terrence Howard continues to make headlines in the news. He's suing people for stealing things from him. He's suing people because they didn't pay him enough money. In some of these cases, he might have some ground, but when you watch the interviews, the one thing that continually pops up with Terrence Howard is everything is always someone else's fault. He's always being victimized. And if you listen to the podcast, you know that I am not a fan of that approach. Episode 32, Blaise Pascal of Glory. We talked about Pascal's wager. We talked about religion. And most importantly, we debated who was the greatest Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. Doug was lame and chose Leonardo, so not only lame but incorrect. And I obviously chose Donatello because he was the most important and the most valuable member of the team, and he was the most crucial to their success. So therefore, he was the greatest. I decided, much like the other one that I know one did it. Let me try it again. I decided, much as I did with a previous topic we debated, to throw this one out there to AI. And what I got from Gemini, from Grok, and from ChatGPT, all three AI sources agreed that the single greatest, and the word greatest was the word that I used, Ninja Turtle, was Donatello. The logic from Grok was that greatest probably means most impactful to their success, and that's Donatello. His intelligence and inventions often save the day, and when brute force fails, his calm demeanor balances the team dynamics. It gives an example from the 2003 series about how his skills frequently turn the tide against the foot and other threats. And then it says, if it's about fan appeal and emotional resonance, Raphael often steals the show with his intensity and relatability. So Raphael should be in consideration. And I would agree. Those are the two turtles I said were the best. Donatello with a clear number one, and Raphael is probably number two. ChatGPT says, tough call, but if I had to pick a favorite, it's Donatello. He's the brains behind the operation, holding everything together while the others are arguing or goofing off. He's inventing tech, hacking systems, and still holding his own in a fight with just a stick. That's peak underdog energy. I love that. Peak underdog energy. Yeah, the AI unanimously agrees that Doug is wrong here. Point for Tom. Donatello is the best turtle. Greatest and best. I used both terms, and Donatello was the name that kept popping up. So suck it. Donatello rules. Episode 33. I think we called this one the faux assassin, or what the Trump happened in Pennsylvania, something like that. We talked about the Trump assassination attempt. And you know what? The update on this one is simple. Shady things happened with the Secret Service. The head of the Secret Service was let go and was embarrassing and awful when she testified about the incident. The assassin failed. Someone tried again, and they failed even worse. And we're moving on. Episode 34. We are moderately successful nothings. I don't think that's what we called that one. I think I've got this wrong. We talked about legacy. I might have just called this one legacy. Sorry, I'm referring from our episode log, which has like descriptions and possible titles, and I should probably just be clicking here and going through the actual episode list. But episode 34, we talked about legacy. This was an episode where we didn't have anything planned. We just kind of showed up, and Doug just didn't really have anything he wanted to talk about. So we said, Tom, give me a subject. I think this is the one where he actually said he was chatting about something, and I misunderstood his text, and I thought that was the topic. And yeah, so I had to run the conversation here and carry the weight of the team, be the Donatello in our group. And I talked legacy, and it was an interesting one. We talked everything about what does legacy mean? What do you want your legacy to be? What's more important for your legacy to be honest or favorable? It's a good episode. It's one of those kind of get a peek behind the curtain at Tom and Doug and really see our puzzle pieces kind of episodes. So if you want one of those, go listen to 34 Legacy. That's what the name is. But more importantly, in this one, we did a superpowers draft. We decided we were going to draft the best superpowers. I got to pick first. I picked teleportation, and Doug snap agreed with me. He's like, damn it, that's the one I wanted, teleportation. So we just agreed. No matter what he ended up picking, we agreed teleportation is the single greatest superhero ability, superpower. And the update on this one is that Brandon Sanderson, noted fantasy fiction writer, one of my favorite, like top 3 fantasy writers right now, he's just amazing. Mistborn series is an excellent series. He's a good writer and he's a fun writer and he's an epic fantasy writer. He agreed with us in an interview during, I don't know if it was Comic-Con or what, but someone asked him, if you have any superhero ability, what would you pick? And he went into a very lengthy explanation of why teleportation is the best. I love his explanation. The way he looked at teleportation was very Sanderson. But the update here is that one of the greatest fantasy writers in the world agreed with us. Teleportation is the single best superpower. You can Google that one and look it up and see his reasoning. It's a fun one. What else did we talk about there? I guess that's the update for that one. Episode 35 was the Olympic Tour de France. This was a fun one where I literally just asked Doug Olympic trivia because he said he hadn't watched it. And he did very well. He actually apparently had stayed up on the headlines, and even having not watched the Olympics, he knew most of the answers to the questions I gave him. And one of the topics in that episode, we talked about the controversy in boxing. It seems the trans agenda has been very forward and very on the front of things for the last couple of years, and it made an appearance in the Olympics in a couple of different ways. But one way in which it was felt was in the boxing realm, where 2 different boxers won gold who were formally banned from other boxing tournaments for failing gender tests, undisclosed gender tests. And they both won gold again. And for some reason, and I'm going to get the name wrong, I always do, Imani Khalif was sort of the one that drew most of the media headlines. And I shouldn't say for some reason, it's obvious why. Imani Khalif, I'm just going to call her Khalif. She's big and she has a ton of muscle, and in a lot of ways, physiologically, is built like a man, just bigger, stronger, denser, more muscle mass. And there was a lot of controversy. The medical team reported, no, she was actually born a man and failed these tests and refused to acknowledge it. And someone else says, no, she's always been a woman. There was a lot of back and forth, but there's been very little empirical evidence unless you trust a released leak from someone leaking medical appointments and disclosures. I'm hesitant to trust that because, again, it hasn't been verified. So there's really no empirical evidence. If you're going by what the eyes tell you, Khalif is big, just large and physically superior to the women in the ring that she boxed with. But there's been no proof either way yet. The update is that boxing this year, boxing is now regulated by World Boxing, so it's a different organization than who was running it before the Olympics. The Olympic Committee is handing over their control to them as well, and World Boxing has announced mandatory sex testing for all athletes. All athletes have to submit to at least one sex test to compete in the gender in which they want to fight or compete if it's a non-boxing event. And they have to pass for a chromosome test and some other tests in there for their gender. The Eindhoven Box Cup in the Netherlands is popping up here real soon. And just this week, Khalif has decided to skip the Eindhoven Boxing Cup because she refuses to take the sex test. This is... if you listen to the episode 35, you'll know where I stand on this. And I'm leaning toward Khalif is probably a biological male and should not be boxing with women unless it can be proven otherwise. This update is interesting to me because I feel as though in this case, if you're an athlete and you're trying to compete and this is your dream and your goal, submitting to a medical test is nothing outside the norm. This is not something you're not already doing before fights. It's a swab in the mouth. It's not anything invasive. So for Khalif to refuse to take this test, I feel as though that's pretty suspicious, that's just more smoke for the fire. The decision was apparently not from World Boxing. They came out in a statement to the Associated Press and said that this decision was Imani's. Gosh, I'm going to learn how to pronounce that one day. And they said they regretted her not participating, but what are you going to do if someone refuses to take part and take that test, the chance to put this all behind them? I don't know. There's nothing new. That's your update there. It seems as though If we're going to take this and infer, which is a dangerous thing to do, but sometimes that's all you can do because people aren't willing to give you empirical evidence. If we're going to infer, then right now it appears as though Khalif is probably not going to pass a gender test, biological sex test, and is passing on that opportunity. So I think that whole topic will probably be put to bed here pretty soon. I think that's going to be the update for there. Episode 36, What is a Woman Part 2? Well, this was a good one. We brought on Big Lux Violin, who is a fantastic musician, a social activist. He was an elected official for his local town on the town council for a while. He recently got married to an amazing woman who's also now his business partner. He's a fantastic guy, and his life is heading in fantastic places. And he's a friend of mine, and I'm just stupidly happy for him. We had him on. He came on as an ally for the trans community and kind of spoke on their behalf. They gave him a letter explaining why they didn't feel this was their place to talk to us about this, that they didn't feel we were a safe environment, and they refused to talk to us, and they sent an ally instead, and that was Big Lux. It was a 2-hour episode. I think it was our first 2-hour episode. It was quite good. The actual title was Two Dads Remix, expanding on our spiciest episode yet. And it was interesting. We got his perspective, and he gave us some feedback and some suggestions. And in some places we took that, and in some places we decided, no, that's not really who we are, though. It was a good back and forth. If you want to hear that, please go back and check out that episode. It was good. The update on this one is very simple. I tried. I sent 3 different emails, and I made 1 phone call, and I received no responses to my inquiries. I asked to get, I explained that we had Big Lux Violin as an ally come onto our show, that they had suggested this was not their fight, but an ally's fight for them, and that I was trying to have a conversation with someone who lived the experience so I could better understand, that I would love especially to speak to a parent of someone who identifies as trans to understand more what they're going through, and they never once responded to me. So bad faith, I don't know, but it feels like every step of the journey on this where we're trying to get conversation on this topic, we get shut down, with the exception of someone I play poker with, who I spoke with about a week ago when I was playing. I got to play last weekend. It was great. Their son, their biological son, is a trans woman, and they spoke to me about their experience. And there was a lot of concerns of bullying, and there was a lot of fear of suicide risk because they suspected something was going on early, but the child wouldn't talk to them. And they gave me a little bit of perspective into how that was as a parent. And that's something I think probably deserves an entire episode. We're going to try to find a guest here soon, and maybe I'll tell that story. And I did not get their permission to go into detail about it on the podcast, but we talked about it. And so without name dropping and dropping too much information, I will say that from a parent's perspective, the fear and the issues that your trans child goes through and that you go through as a parent to take care of them, to protect them, to support them, to love them, I imagine that it's just very difficult and challenging in unique ways when your child is trans and you don't know how to relate to that personally. And it sounds as though it's a journey that the parent took with their kid once the child was comfortable talking to them. And it sounds like it's an ongoing journey that hasn't reached its destination yet. And I do think I would like to have a conversation with a parent on the podcast to kind of help get a better understanding of this. So if you know someone who is willing to talk about this on the cast, they can do it anonymously if they want to. They can release as much information as they want if they want to, and their child is comfortable with it. I want to make sure everyone's okay with this. I would really like to have this conversation, and I would be very curious. That is one of the big takeaways I took from Big Lux's perspective is it would be good of us to talk to someone and get that perspective that we don't have. And he's 100% right. And I would like that. I tried to get it from 2 different organizations. No one wanted to respond to me. I'm done with the organizations. I'm going to go talk to people now. So if you've got someone who would be good for that, someone who would be interested, please put them in touch. 2dtpod@gmail.com is a great way to reach us. If you know me personally, feel free to call me or text me. I would just like to have that conversation. Moving on. The next episode was the CIA-friendly alternative to LSD. Oh boy. We talked about cognitive mental prisons in this one, essentially plugging someone up to something like the Matrix and uploading memories into their brain once they've committed a crime and received a prison sentence, and simulating years worth of prison experience in minutes. and having those memories stay with them and having them feel as though they actually did 10 years in prison in 10 minutes. This was a fascinating talk. This was really interesting. I took it some places Doug didn't expect it to go. We had a good conversation. And I think if you're into sci-fi at all, if you're into the Matrix at all, this is an interesting one to listen to. The update on this, the creator, and I thought I had his name in here, but apparently I did not. He says this technology is nothing to worry about because it's, quote, at least 10 years away from being a realistic probability. This quote came out just a couple of months ago. 10 years away from being a realistic probability is kind of frightening, especially since we just had an AI breakthrough last year that we didn't expect to have until 2040. AI and quantum computing, both actually. So to say right now this technology is 10 years away from being a realistic probability, I feel like that means they're continuing to explore this. It's being worked on. And we'll probably have a follow-up episode on this, or maybe just an odd something along those lines. But it's still in the making. Take a listen to that episode if you want to have a good chuckle and hear some terrifying science fiction, dystopian future stuff. It was a really interesting. The next episode was Don't Let Your Kid's Name Be Lame. And shame on me. The woman I was talking about in that story, her name was not Lame, it was Shame. Shame. I felt so bad I got that wrong, but I did update that in the very next episode. This one was basically talking about how naming your kids has consequences. Be careful what you name your kids. And then we shared some stories, not only what I wanted to name my children initially, but also of a young man named Loki Skywalker. Oh, what was his last name? I apologize, listeners. I should have had this. His first and middle name were Loki Skywalker, and his family was trying to take him on a trip to, I believe it was the Dominican Republic. And the passport office refused to issue him a passport because Skywalker is a copyrighted name. Doug and I argued over the legalities of this and what a copyright protects and what it doesn't. And it turns out the update on this episode is that I was exactly right. The Home Office ended up reversing its decision and issued the passport without requiring a name change or Disney's approval. They allowed the family to proceed with their trip in October of 2024. Legal experts and commentators and pundits and lawyers, everybody came out off the handle on this, debating it. And what the ultimate finding and agreement was that copyright law does not restrict personal names. It only restricts commercial use. And the Home Office's stance initially was an overreach and was unconstitutional. So another point for Tom. I feel like I'm racking those up here. It feels kind of nice. The next episode was Beware of Deuce Fairy. This was such a fun one. We talked about why you should lie to your kids. We had a very special guest on here. Charles has been with us, maybe not since the beginning, but I think he was our first true fan, and he's by far the most supportive fan. He sends us technical advice for our audio. He sends us apps. He texts me every Wednesday after the episode goes, and I can't say it any other way than Charles makes me feel loved for this podcast, and I love the guy for it. He's a good human being. Then he shared a hilarious and extremely helpful story about the Deuce Fairy, a lie that he told his kid to get his kid to stop sucking on his thumbs. If you didn't hear that episode, if you never looked at that episode, oh, good gosh, please go do that. It is absolutely hilarious. Charles was fantastic, and we enjoyed having him on the show. The update for that show is actually about Charles. He texted me at one point and said that, one of the things I said on an episode about poker actually kind of resonated with him, and that he was exploring a career change. He was going to try to do something different and get a job that he felt would pay him what his time was worth and what he was worth. And he had quite the journey to get there. He had to enroll in some courses, and he had to go get certifications, and he did all this while working a full-time job and taking care of his wife and taking care of his son, who's a cutie, by the way. I finally got to meet him at a music festival, and he's absolutely adorable. And he dug his heels in and he did it. And he did it in record time. And he went out, and recently he got the job and left the other one behind, which makes me a little sad because I got to meet him through his other job. But he's got the new job, and he's doing, I don't know exactly what it is because I'm just not that smart, but it has something to do with cloud security. And it's not quite IT, I don't think, but he's doing something with digital cloud security. And He just sounded so happy last time I talked to him about it, and I know it's more money and it's a better work environment because it's remote and it's doing something he likes and that challenges him. And the update on this one is that Charles is crushing it. Super glad that things went well for him, that he went on this journey, and I'm super glad that he's killing it. And go listen to him talk about the Deuce Fairy. It's my favorite guest spot that we've had so far. It's just fantastic. The next episode was The Bitch of Being a Dad. Went a little deep on this one. This was another one of those peek behind the curtain Tom puzzle pieces episodes, and it's still one of my favorite episodes. Essentially, being a parent doesn't come with an instruction manual, although there is one in the works. I've released sort of the first half of a chapter on our Patreon, so there is sort of an instruction manual there, written with a little bit of humor and a little lightheartedness. But essentially, the gist of this episode was that kids don't come with an instruction manual, and you won't know if you're doing a good job or not until it's too late. That's kind of the thing. No real update here. I thought maybe I would share some of the advice I put on the book on Patreon, but I think on this one, I'm just going to leave it as we're here for you. It's a journey. Being a dad is not easy. And I think that if you're trying, you're honestly trying in good faith, I think you're doing a good job. So go, Dad, go. Keep it up. And if you ever need support or you ever need anything in the dad arena, even if it's just a dad to tell you about something they screwed up so you feel better about your mistakes, reach out to us. Again, email, Facebook, Messenger, Instagram, wherever. Just reach out to us. We are happy to share our mistakes. We are happy to share our successes. Yeah, just reach out. Being a dad is hard. Being a parent is hard. And we're here for it. And we're here for you. The next episode was called Boobs Are Great. Something about nipples. This was a fun one. This was the best time I could have possibly had on the lamest Las Vegas trip ever. I thought it was going to end up being an extremely lame trip, and I got rescued by pulling an all-nighter and running into some crazy blokes on my last night there. Listen to this one. It's fun. It's an epic story. I still kind of can't believe everything came full circle the way that it did. The update here is that Beardy never reached out to me. Where the hell are you, Beardy? Where are you? Seriously. I never got my update. I don't know if that nipple piercing experience hooked you up. I don't know if I traumatized you. Maybe it was both. Maybe it traumatized you and then you hooked up and it had like some terrible, awful effect on your sex life from that point forward. I don't know. But I do know that we still have between 1 and 3 Australian listeners every week, and I'm confident you're one of them. If not, then it's one of your buddies who knows you. I want an update. Reach out to us. I want to know how it came out. Next episode was, we had the bonus Texas chili contest, which is our lowest performing episode of all time. And that was just a bonus. That wasn't really an episode, so I guess that makes sense. And then we had Ghosts, Groot Up the Butt, and Ghoulish Jokes. Another of my all-time favorite episodes. Like, this is definitely, every time I say that, I'm talking probably in my top 5. Your update here is that I am more convinced than ever the old house was haunted, and that somebody was murdered and buried in the backyard or in the woods behind the backyard, and that the new house is lovely and has a wonderful energy and is not haunted and is not possessed by demons. Knock on wood. The new house is fantastic, and we love it here, and it's just fantastic. Is Australia real? Was the next one. This is our first of many episodes talked about Australia. Well, I guess if you count Boobs Are Great, it's the second. And the update here is also very simple. I'm going to go ahead and decide that Australia is not real because Beardy hasn't reached out yet. And I feel like I'd be more inclined to believe in it if this guy reached out to me from Australia and said something, just any 2 words. The real update here is that Rag Reynolds has written another book. And he authored this one under the name Ryan Reynolds instead of Rag Reynolds. And the name of it is The Epitome of Perfection, Step-by-Step Guide. And it might have the single greatest review of all time. Because Hugh Jackman, if you can believe it's the real Hugh Jackman, and honestly, I think that it is, Hugh Jackman left a review, gave him a 5-star review, and said, "This is not the Ryan Reynolds I expected when I saw this book." So I think Rag Reynolds may have gotten Hugh Jackman to give him a 5-star review. That's almost as impressive as the Two Dads Talking podcast pissing off the Prince of Sealand. Good job, Rag. Way to be, man. You are still that guy that divided by 0. You still have perfect timing. I'm, you know what? I might actually go buy the Epitome of Perfection step-by-step guide now. I might do that. The next episode was The Good Old Days Are Right Now, or Happy Thanksgiving. We we asked, the update on that one is that during that episode, we asked for enough followers so that Facebook would give us the right to live stream on the Two Dads Talking account instead of our personal accounts. And we got them. We don't do much live streaming, but we got what we wanted, and we do some live streaming. So we got there. We're good. Thank you guys for that. The next step is going to be YouTube to get people there so we can do it on YouTube. There's a few more tools available for us if we do it that way. But thank you guys for that. We got there. We appreciate it. If you haven't clicked a like on our Facebook, on our Instagram, on our YouTube, give us a like and a follow, please. We would appreciate that, and it helps us to reach milestones that we can do more things with. Pardon-moi was the next one, where we talked about pardons, presidential pardons, specifically the Hunter Biden pardon and how it pissed us off, and whether or not you would pardon your child for something, if you should bail your kid out or if you should leave your kid to deal with consequences. The update on this one is pretty simple. Trump, since he's been elected, since January of this year, has issued 1,600 pardons and 25 commutations. I'm just disgusted. I really am. Okay, that's your update there. Moving on. Social media banned down under was another episode we talked about Australia. It was about them putting a social media ban out there for kids under the 16 and under, I think it was. And the update on this is quite simple. It doesn't matter. Australia isn't real. Unless Beardy chimes in, this is the only update for Australia-related topics moving forward, is that it's not real and I don't believe it. The next episode, we talked about how to make the naughty list, sponsored by DraftKings, and talked about a dad who squandered his kids' wealth, his family's wealth, their retirement funds and college funds, and his wife's funds on DraftKings, and how DraftKings may have helped him along on this. We talked about the ethics of people encouraging your gambling, people who are collecting your money, and it was an interesting talk. It was our lead up to the Christmas episode. Merry Christmas, you filthy animals, where we largely debated what is a Christmas movie. And we talked about Die Hard for the longest on this one. We got into the history of the Gremlins movie and eventually got into his Die Hard a movie, or his Die Hard a Christmas movie. And I stuck my heels in and said no. And Doug adamantly defended it and said yes. And so when there's a tie, when we can't break it, when I can't prove to Doug that I'm right with words, what do? We turn to AI. And in this case, Doug gets the point. Grok leans toward calling Die Hard a Christmas movie, but with a smirk. It says it's not your typical holiday flick, but because of the Christmas Eve setting, decorations, and music, it gives festive vibes. And John McClane's quest to save his wife has a faint whiff of holiday redemption. So, yeah, based on its defense right there, I'm going to say it doesn't believe what it's telling me and that it doesn't really think it's a holiday movie, but sure. And then ChatGPT simply said, absolutely, Die Hard is a Christmas movie. And then it said a case of it's set at a Christmas party. It's got Christmas music. John McClane writes ho, 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 and a dead guy. So ChatGPT basically said everything Doug said. All right, point for Doug. Die Hard, I guess, is a Christmas movie. The next episode, what's wrong with the fucking French? We talked about Gisèle Pellicot and how she essentially had the chance to be anonymous, to defend herself to prosecute over 50 men that sexually assaulted her with the help of her husband, who drugged her and allowed them to do it over years. And instead of remaining anonymous through the process, she made the court public. And what a brave act that was, and the reform that it would hopefully bring to the French people and the French government, who, I'm sorry to say, are just woefully behind in civil rights for women. The more I looked into it, the more it was just really disgusting and sad. Since then, Gisèle has had a women's refuge in Spain named after her. And of the 51 assailants who were found guilty in that particular trial, only one of them is appealing the verdict. The other 50 are not even appealing it. They're going to do their time in jail and they're going to rot, and good on them. And the one who is appealing it, when something comes of that, I saw the last update as of a week or two ago, I think, I'll make sure that I get an update on there, because Gisèle deserves to be a reminder, and she deserves a little bit more honor than what she's probably getting here on the American side, where she's just not getting a lot of press. Since it did happen in France, that the media here just isn't covering it with the same fervor that they are over there. The Big 5-0 was the next episode, our 50th. And even though Doug failed to meet the scoring requirements as we set out during our arrangement, I still sent Amazon gift cards to our patrons. So if you are in the Reach Week 11 patron category, if you're one of those donors, I sent you essentially an Amazon gift card for a month's donation back. Make sure you claim that. I know one of you did not the last time I looked, and I'll probably have to send you an email to make sure you know it's there again and remind you. But if you're in that patron, if you're at that patron level, you do have an Amazon gift card just waiting in your email inbox. So make sure you claim that. Episode 51, we talked about Bonnie Blue and Lily Phillips. This was Consequences Add Value to Things. This was a hell of an episode, discussing two porn stars who are essentially competing with each other on social media and for press attention, and to see who could sleep with the most guys in one day. And they escalated it into an actually interesting rivalry for a little while. Oh, the latest and greatest here. I feel like I do a Bonnie Blue update every week. So when I put her name in the news section and did a search, I didn't expect to see anything I hadn't already reported on, but it turns out she's been banned from Instagram because she put her next stunt on Instagram. And to sum it up shortly, is she plans to sleep with 2,000 people in public, literally tied up in a glass box. Just the Instagram post was, if you want to come by and make a deposit, you are welcome to do so. And she's going to pick a public place and just literally be a free use woman in public. Yikes. If you listen to my last update, then you'll get this reference. I hope she's drinking a lot of pineapple juice and that every gentleman who partakes in this event is drinking a lot of pineapple juice. The next episode was The Silk Road Less Traveled, which has performed really, really well for us. I didn't expect this one to do as well as it did. But we talked about Ross Ulbricht, who was pardoned by Trump. And we had a lot of discussions about this, and we argued about this one pretty good. If you like when we argue, this was one of the good ones. And your update on this one is, oh gosh, Tom was right once again. Ross Ulbricht was recently gifted $31 million in Bitcoin from Alphabay, from an anonymous Alphabay source. Alphabay is another illicit dark web market trading sales site. It's a lot like what the Silk Road was, is what it is. And if you look at the timing and when this thing was generated, it's almost as though it was set up as soon as he was arrested to just start accumulating things and compile Bitcoin until he was ready to collect it. And he's collected it. And this man now has $31 million that we know of. Okay, go listen to that episode. You'll find out why that upsets me so much. He also appeared at Bitcoin 2025 recently and actually tried to auction off his prison gear. He tried to auction off his jumpsuit and ID cards and art that he made while he was in prison. By all reports, the crowd was not super excited to see him. He gave a rousing speech about freedom and it just didn't go well. So anyway, moving on. The next one was, oh my gosh, where did it go? Actual dad advice, followed by crappy stories from Philly. This was a really fun episode. I talked about pooping in a bathroom stall in the Philadelphia train station. Yeah, that story happened here in episode 53. Don't go chasing waterfalls. The update on this is real simple. We don't normally give dad advice, but I did publish, like I said, some dad advice on Patreon. The user manual for dadding is there. The beginning is there. The start is there. It's lighthearted. It's I think 10 or 15 minutes for the first chapter. It might be a little more, a little less, but it's a good one. And that's really probably the only place we're going to give actual how-to dad advice on this podcast. I do have an upcoming Pennsylvania trip and then an upcoming Philly trip. I will try to collect more stories for future episodes. Dad Fails Navajo Legends was the next episode. Dad Fails Navajo Legends, Poker and Putin on a Horse. Oh, goodness. This was a good one, too. My daughter still thinks I'm a skinwalker. My son does, too, now. They think I'm an evil, shape-shifting demon spirit. And at this point, I'm just leaning into it. So I'm just having a little fun with it, and so be it. Dads and Taxes and Baseball was the next episode. The baseball that we discussed in that one, the Aaron Judge home run ball, sold for $1.5 million. That's what he wound up selling that baseball for at auction. It was like 1.25 with a $250,000, I don't know, whatever seller bonus they got. And it turns out that they're going to wind up, he paid an ordinary income tax on the ball's value at the time he caught it. So he probably spent about 48 cents worth of tax on that ball. And when he sells it, he now has to pay a capital gains tax. That tax number can be anywhere up to 28%. So, in theory, and we don't know exactly how much he paid, but it's going to be up around that 28%. He had to pay about $420,000 in taxes to catch that baseball, which means he still profited 1.8 million, give or take. I'm sorry, not 1.8. 1.08, $1,080,000. Not a bad reward for catching a baseball. Episode 56, Engineers Do It Hard. We talked about a couple of engineers struggling with a super basic problem during my day job and how hilarious I found it and how they did it the hardest way possible. And that's engineers. We also talked about Lowe's screwing up my purchase and how they charged me 5 times. I believe this episode or the next one was the one not sponsored by Lowe's. Definitely find that advertisement. That was a fun one. The update on this one is fuck Lowe's. Still, they've done nothing to make this thing right, and they just have done nothing to secure me as a future customer. So screw them. Moving on. The next episode was Dad Fail. If you're going to kill someone, do it right. And we talked about Cain Velasquez and how he was found guilty but given the minimum sentence, and our reaction after he literally chased someone in a car and fired off rounds at them while they were driving and hit the wrong person. We talked about that a little bit, and that was an interesting discussion about what do you do when you're emotionally tilted and someone's threatened your children and attacked your children. How in control are you supposed to be? Where do you draw the line? Where do you find understanding versus, okay, you need to do better than that? It was an interesting one. We also talked about John Jones, and I mentioned that I would love to consider him the GOAT, the greatest of all time for mixed martial arts, because I think he's the best I've ever seen, but he's always hurt. He's always getting disqualified. He's always getting in trouble for performance-enhancing drugs. Well, as of yesterday, this is really, really still current news. As of yesterday, he still has not agreed to fight the next best fighter at heavyweight in the UFC, Tom Aspinall. There's a lot of speculation he's afraid of him. He had an injury, but the injury's allegedly healed and has been healed for a while, and he's been dodging this guy for a while. John Jones is about to become the single longest tenured heavyweight champion in the UFC. Like he's on the cusp of that, but he's only had one title defense, I think, the whole time he's had it. So all of that time is him literally sitting on the sidelines choosing not to fight, or injured and can't fight. But a lot of that time is him choosing not to fight. And as of yesterday, Dana White said that, there was an agreement in place and that they were going to fight. They were just working out the details. And then other reports immediately popped up with John Jones saying, no, it's not who I want to fight. I'll vacate the belt first. It's nonsense. Stop running away, John. The greatest, if you're going to be the greatest, you need to fight. There's a line about lions. The lion is the king of the jungle because no one questions he's the king of the jungle. He takes out the threats. He dominates the people that would vie for his throne. Be that lion. Don't be this kitty cat that's ducking Tom Aspinall. Be the friggin' best. All right. On to the next episode. Also fight-centered. Fight Night. Lewis versus McDonald's and Tom versus the Angry Beaver. Oh boy. In this episode, we talked about me beating up on a beaver with a stick. Not a euphemism. And we talked about... oh gosh, I had his name. I'm sorry. Chris Lewis, a gentleman who left his kids at McDonald's and then disappeared for 2 hours. When the police were called for child abandonment, his 10-year-old, his 10-year-old, his 4-year-old, and his 1-year-old, I believe. When the police showed up, he said, I was out at a job interview. I had nothing to do with them. Antonio Brown started a GoFundMe saying this is ridiculous. They arrested this man who's trying to build a better life for his kids, and everybody got on their political grandstand about how the police were being racist and they didn't want to see this guy survive and blah, 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 blah. Well, as we said in the podcast, something about this guy's story didn't seem right, and we were right. GoFundMe has since refunded everyone's contribution as information continued to come out that conflicted with his story. It seems that he was not at a job interview. We still don't know where he was, but he's given multiple various accounts, and none of them appear to be the truth because they all conflict. It sounds like he dropped his kids off at McDonald's and just went to go do stuff for himself for whatever reason for 2 hours and just left his kids there for other people to watch without, well, without knowing they were watching them. I'm looking at the McBabysits ad spot in episode 59. It was a good one. It was fun. And McBabysit is probably the way to go if you have a job interview that's a couple of blocks away and you need an hour and a half or 2 hours. Next episode, this is a Tomocracy. Oh, it's got such a nice ring to it, doesn't it? This one's real simple. Paige Beckers, I'm so sorry. You deserved better. I'm so sorry I got your name wrong. Drunk Tom will never get that wrong again. And I will probably never be Drunk Tom on this podcast again. Please forgive me. We heart you. Go Yukon. Go Paige. I hope you crush this year. We're off to a slow start, but I still think you're going to crush your rookie year. Episode 60, Elon Musk and Doge. This episode is outperforming everything around it, and I'm kind of shocked. But it's a good old Tom and Doug fight. We're probably going to talk as we record tonight about the breakup of Trump and Mr. Musk. So I don't want to spoil too much here. You'll get that, I think, next week. If not, I'll do another update for you. But oh boy, are those girls a fighting, and they're having a spat, and that bridge is burning hard. More and more documents have come out that make me think I was probably right in this argument, that Musk got his hands on a lot of information he shouldn't have, as someone whose businesses are locked up into so many government contracts in the bidding process. Lots and lots of articles have come out that make me think Tom gets another point for that one. Although to Doug's credit, he also didn't feel Musk was the right guy for that job. We just disagreed on some other aspects of it and how it should be done, and whether or not we can actually have an ethically run government program. Yeah, he was probably right that we can't, but I feel like I'm right that we should still strive for it. Anyway, episode 61, Moana versus Frozen. We called this one Moana versus Mo-ana, what Frozen's title should have been. And we debated a number of things. And somehow, after talking about the Pope passing away and Doug humping a police car, we had another Bonnie Blue update in there. We talked about a curse on American presidents that was broken by Reagan surviving an assassination attempt. We went kind of all over, and then somehow when we thought we were done talking for the night, had like a 30 or 40-minute argument about which movie was better, Moana or Frozen. Your update here is that Moana is still the best movie, and you should let it go. Episode 62 was Guerrilla Warfare. This might be my favorite of all the episodes. I don't know why, but this one was fantastic. It started off as 100 Men versus Gorilla, and it turned into something very different. And this episode was fun. So if you haven't listened to that one, go listen to that one. I think I'm going to submit that one to a couple of different places here. It's on my list, and I've got some work to do, but I'm actually going to submit that episode because I really liked it. Your update here is that chimps are more badass than we realize. We both said we couldn't take a chimp, that a chimp would mess us up. And then a friend of mine sent me an article about a chimpanzee that felt challenged by a human. And it turns out that when a chimpanzee fights someone who it thinks is threatening for dominance, it makes sure that they will never be seen as a dominance threat ever again. The common practice for chimpanzees when they fight another male for dominance and for leadership, when they're done, is to bite off their face and rip off their genitals. I think it was like 12% or 14% of people thought they could beat a chimp. I am so sorry, guys. You're wrong. You're just wrong. And also, capybaras, an animal that I know about from a coworker at work. I've got some little 3D printed capybaras on my desk from them. I thought they were kind of cool and kind of cute. They are the most badass animal in the animal kingdom. Other animals just leave them the hell alone and just let them. They're so chill that other animals just don't mess with them. I saw videos when I was looking at this of them riding on crocodiles' backs, just catching a ride across the land and across the water, just chilling. Of lions, just like, curling up with them and taking naps. And hippos leaving them alone. Like, hippos mess with everything. Capybaras, we need just to give them a shout out. The coolest, chillest animal in the animal kingdom by far. There's just no words. There are just no words. We'll talk about that in a future episode, I'm sure. And then the last episode previous to this, on the Principality of Sealand. Sealand and the badass sovereign Prince Michael. What is there to say? Sealand was a fantastic story. I am not a knight of Sealand, and I guess we can just leave it there. My review has been marked unhelpful. They didn't appreciate it. There is a 2DT Pod listener. Someone put up a review and tagged 2DT Pod and made me happy. We only have the one, but one of you beautiful meat sacks listened, and one of you went on their eCitizens page and left a 5-star review. And I frickin' heart you. I'm assuming it's a colleague because they they put an anonymous submariner or something. So I'm assuming it's probably one of the engineers at work who's recently started listening to my show. Whoever you are, you're great. Stop by my desk. I will find a way to thank you. I'll hook you up with something. You guys are great. And that brings us to episode 64, the update episode. This has been challenging, just talking by myself and re-recording things that I messed up by myself. I've been working on this all week. I've tried to do this like 4 or 5 times, and man, it's hard without my counterpart. I miss my work wife. Yeah, it'll be good to have Doug back on. He will probably have a solo episode, or maybe he'll bring on a guest to replace me next week because I don't think I'll be available to record next week. It's been a journey. We are 64 episodes and 2 years in. Thank you guys for listening. I know some of you talk to me about it. We don't get a lot of emails. We don't get a lot of digital interactions or comments. I'd kind of like more of those, to be honest. But the ones who talk to me about this, I love it. The ones who text me about it, give me suggestions, I love it. Those of you on our Patreon, we are so grateful for you. You guys really give us value, and we appreciate it. It's nice to know that we're appreciated somewhere. And yeah, it's good to have something that someone found valuable. It's good to have this place and this space. All right, that's all you got. Next time I'll have Doug with me. It'll be more fun, more engaging, more entertaining. Thank you guys for taking this journey with us. It's been really neat. It's been really fun. I feel like it's been a place where I've opened up sometimes and gotten way more personal than I get with anyone other than my therapist, who frankly I've not been good about talking to lately. It's been a little while. Thank you guys. We appreciate it. Thank you for giving us a home and a place to be and someone to talk to. Thank you, whoever left that post on the Principality of Sealand's website. You, whoever you are, have a special place in my heart moving forward. We love you guys. Thank you very much. Go, Dad, go. Here's to 64 more episodes.